You're sitting in your doctor's office. You're 43. You've been tired for months, maybe years. Your joints ache. Your sleep is terrible. And your doctor says the same thing. It's probably just stress. But here's the thing. What if it's not just stress? What if something very specific is happening inside your body? Something medicine has been ignoring for decades. Today, we're talking about why longevity medicine is finally paying attention to women, and why the timing couldn't be more important. For most of medical history, researchers used male subjects, male mice, male cells, male bodies, and then they assumed the results applied to everyone. But women don't age the same way men do, not even close, and we're only now beginning to understand the implications. The turning point. It might be happening right now, and it has to do with an organ most of us don't think much about after our reproductive years are over. Let's start with a paradox. Women live longer than men on average, about 5 years longer in most countries. But those extra years, they're often spent sick. More chronic disease, more disability, more years in what researchers call poor healthspan, alive but not thriving. And until very recently, nobody was asking a simple question: why? Why do women's bodies start declining when they do, and how they do? Research is now showing that women age fundamentally differently than men, and the key may be the ovaries, not just for reproduction but for overall health. According to the Global Wellness Summit's 2026 Trends Report, researchers are now calling the ovary command central for women's health. And its decline, which can begin 10 to 15 years before menopause, may dramatically accelerate systemic aging throughout the entire body. Here's what that means. In your mid-30s, long before you notice any symptoms, your ovaries may already be starting to age faster than the rest of you. And that aging doesn't stay contained. It ripples outward, affecting your heart, your bones, your brain, your metabolism, everything. Think about it this way. Most of us learn about menopause as a single event, the end of periods, somewhere in your early 50s. But that's just the final chapter. The story starts much earlier. Your ovaries begin changing in ways that affect not just fertility, but your whole system's ability to maintain itself. The hormones your ovaries produce, estrogen, progesterone, and yes, even testosterone, they're not just about reproduction, they're protective. They protect your heart, they protect your bones, they support cognitive function, and when they decline, that protection starts to disappear. This is why women's risk of cardiovascular disease jumps dramatically after menopause. It's why osteoporosis hits women so much harder than men. And it may explain something researchers have puzzled over for years: why women report such different experiences of aging compared to their partners. Now here's where 2026 becomes significant. After decades of using male-dominated research, the longevity field is finally pivoting. The Global Wellness Summit identified women's longevity as a top trend for 2026, recognizing that the longevity boom has been, in their words, male-dominated. And that's starting to change. Research funding is shifting. Clinical trials are being designed differently. The questions being asked are evolving. XPRIZE is now fundraising for a competition on ovarian health with at least $50 million in prizes to develop new methods for measuring and improving ovarian function. $50 million. That's how serious the scientific community is getting about understanding something we've overlooked for far too long. So what's actually happening inside the ovaries as they age, and why does it matter so much for everything else? The ovaries are the first major organ system to age in women, not your heart, not your brain. Your ovaries typically begin declining in your mid-30s to 40s. And unlike other organs, which age gradually, ovarian aging happens in a relatively compressed window, and it triggers changes everywhere else. Researchers at Cold Spring Harbor describe ovarian aging as a critical yet understudied driver of systemic aging in female bodies. And that systemic aging shows up in measurable ways. Your arteries stiffen faster. Your bone density drops faster. Your metabolic rate shifts. But here's what makes this moment different. We're not just identifying the problem anymore. Researchers are actively developing interventions. Emerging strategies for slowing ovarian aging include rapamycin trials. Yes, that's a drug originally developed for organ transplants, now being tested in new ways. Antioxidant interventions, stem cell therapy, even ovarian tissue transplantation. These aren't science fiction, they're active areas of investigation. Pilot studies on rapamycin for slowing ovarian aging are beginning in 2026, and while it's early, very early, the scientific interest is real. Now, I want to be honest about something. A lot of this research is still in very early stages. We don't have proven treatments yet, and there are legitimate debates. Some experts worry that framing menopause as a disease to be fixed rather than a natural transition could be problematic. Others note that rapamycin has immunosuppressive effects. It's not a simple fix. These are complex trade-offs that need careful study. But here's what's undeniable. The conversation is finally happening. The funding is flowing. And women's biology is getting the attention it deserves. So what does this mean for you right now? First, consider reframing how you think about the changes you experience in your 40s and 50s. These aren't mysterious symptoms. They may be connected to something very specific happening with your hormones, and that's worth understanding. One practical step: talk to your doctor about hormone health proactively. Don't wait until menopause. Having a baseline earlier may help guide decisions later. Consider baseline hormone and metabolic testing in your late 30s. It may help you and your healthcare provider identify patterns as things change. Focus on the things that research suggests may help: cardiovascular exercise, strength training, bone-loading activities. These are the systems most affected by ovarian decline. And here's a critical one: bone health. Many women don't think about osteoporosis until it's too late. Weight-bearing exercise now may help protect you later. If you're finding this information helpful, subscribe. We cover evidence-based health topics like this every week. Now, let's talk about something important. Stay informed about this rapidly evolving field. The research is changing fast. What we know in 2026 will be dramatically different from what we knew in 2020. And I want to acknowledge something else. For many women, this information might feel like a lot. It might feel overwhelming. But knowledge is power here. Understanding that these changes have a biological basis, that's actually liberating. It's not just in your head, it's real. And the science is finally catching up to what many women have felt for years, that something was happening in their bodies that medicine wasn't taking seriously. Now that's changing, and it matters, not just for individual women, but for how we think about longevity science as a whole. Because here's the truth. You can't optimize for longevity if you're only studying half the population, and that's essentially what we've been doing. When you test drugs only on male mice, when you exclude women of childbearing age from clinical trials, when you treat the male body as the default, you miss everything. The 2026 pivot toward women-specific longevity research isn't just about fairness, it's about getting the science right. And while the interventions are still being studied, while we don't have definitive answers yet, the fact that we're asking these questions is itself a breakthrough. So here's my encouragement. Advocate for yourself. If your doctor dismisses your symptoms as just stress or just aging, you might want to push back. Ask about hormone levels. Ask about ovarian reserve testing if that's relevant for you. Ask what proactive monitoring might look like. Because the paradigm is shifting, and you deserve to be part of a medical system that understands your biology, not one that treats it as an afterthought. To recap, women live longer but often spend more years in poor health. The ovaries may be command central for why that happens. Ovarian aging begins years before menopause and affects cardiovascular health, bone density, metabolism, and cognition. Understanding this changes how we approach women's health. And 2026 marks a turning point, with major research funding, clinical trials, and a scientific community finally asking the right questions. The science is evolving fast. Stay informed, consult your doctor, and remember your body deserves medicine that was designed with you in mind. Thanks for listening.